It's mildly entertaining to watch this man lose his mind over this crusade against industry-wide standards.
Industry-wide standards, you say? Let's look at some amazing industry-wide standards from the past. Like, I don't know, the VHS player. Wasn't that great? Didn't that look amazing? Did it sound amazing? Yeah, or how about another industry-wide standard, like asbestos? Yeah, that was good for everybody, wasn't it? Just because it's an industry-wide standard doesn't mean we should be using it. That's the whole point of the show, in case you didn't catch the memo, that the people out there spending money on records deserve just a little bit better than what they've been getting. Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 285 of SMG Viewers Comments, my weekly show where I try and answer your comments and questions about recording to the best of my ability. You got a comment, you got a question, I want to hear from you, leave a comment below. Anyway, let's get right to it.
I have never seen or heard of a drum sample driving a Rolls Royce into a swimming pool.
Wow, man, you know, I know you meant that as a joke, but I think that's kind of what's missing from rock and roll, a little bit of that mayhem. It's very hard for something written in C++ to be a John Bonham or a Keith Moon or something like that. We need a little bit more of that anarchy and rock and roll. It's something sorely lacking these days.
I got into a disagreement with a recording engineer the other day over some tracks I asked him to send me over a year ago. First he tries to give me the runaround, so I had to stop him. Then he starts demanding screenshots from one of the other members, which I promptly provide for him. Then he starts bringing up an outstanding balance that apparently we owe him, but when I try to set up payment for him, he refuses because he doesn't need the money that bad. So I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm now writing up a contract for future recording engineers with a clause in it that states that they must accept payment. I've never thought I would see the day where I'd have to force a recording engineer to get paid for his hard work. What the hell is going on with people these days?
Well, dude, from what I can piece together from that, it kind of sounds like you guys are asking for the multi-tracks to your recording. I don't know if you guys are actually asking for the session files as well. He might be a little reluctant to hand that over. I think that's what he's doing. He might be stalling for time. Maybe he doesn't have the tracks, or maybe they're lost. Who knows? He needs to find them. Generally, though, it really does sound like he doesn't want to hand that over. Now, I generally have an agreement with bands that come in the studio. It's like, if you want the tracks, absolutely. But if you want my mixes, no, that's mine. You're not getting those. Just as long as we understand that from the get-go, we can work together. It's like, just because you buy Kentucky Fried Chicken doesn't mean you get the Colonel's recipe. It's the same kind of idea. If you guys want the raw basic tracks, absolutely no problem. That's not a big deal, and that should be well understood with any studio you walk into, is ask that simple question. What is your policy on the tracks? Can we have them after we're done? Yeah, if he says no, you might want to go check out another studio.
Hey Glenn, greeting from the cold land of Sweden. I've been watching you for a long time, and your tutorials are the reason I progress. My question is, vocals, Voclas, vocals. I've gotten to the stage, with your help, where I get the vocals to sit nice in the mix, but I can't get them to be perfect. How do you get the sweet spot when mixing vocals? Maybe you could show us mere humans how to tackle this specific problem, /Blackbird Kings.
Hey dude, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for all your support throughout the years. It's guys like you are the reason I make this show, so I really am grateful for your support for all this time. Now for me, when it comes to recording vocals, I usually don't have a problem because I always hit it with a distressor back here, and that kind of gets things to sit just right every single time. It's a wonderful compressor because it levels out your vocals without leaving a signature to the sound. You can't really hear the compressor working unless you get extreme with it. You can hit it pretty hard. You can hit it with a 6-to-1 ratio. So I don't know, is this an endorsement for the distressor? Probably. I'd say make sure you're using that plugin at least. The other thing is, I don't normally do reverb on vocals. I only do delay, so I get a much more in-your-face kind of sound. I find reverb just kind of clouds up the vocal and puts things too far back for my tastes, especially when it comes to a dense modern metal mix. But ultimately though, just keep this in mind that there's no such thing as perfection in mixing. Mixes are only abandoned, they are never finished.
As for the samples versus IRs debate, couldn't you say that IRs are like samples of engineering? You're using someone else's miking skills without having to set up a cab with mics. I don't want to go into the tiny details of this conversation, as I have no problems whatsoever with sample augmenting and using IRs. Whatever gives you a good sounding mix is the right choice. My problem with this kind of stuff, as for you I think, is all the guys who start up using the same stuff ending up always sounding the same. I've been a great fan and subscribed since 2014. Love from Italy, FUG.
Hey Alessandro, thank you so much for watching over the years. I really do appreciate that. I think you're spot on with your assessment there. Yes, IRs are basically sampling the engineering, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I said this way back in 2014 with the fans deserve better, is when we start replacing the player. That's where we start losing the art, and that's where we stop getting that wonderful sound, what happens when you push an artist to the breaking point. That's where the really interesting and amazing music happens. When we take the player out of that and just timeline everything and fix it with a computer, we lose that. When you use an IR, you're not replacing the artist, you're replacing the engineering. Now, for somebody working on his desktop who's never mic'd up a cabinet before, that can be a huge help into getting them the kind of guitar sound that they're after without them ripping their house out. Myself, I took 10 years to learn how to record guitar, and I've got tons and tons and tons of notes to verify that. I drove myself absolutely insane trying to get it right. You guys can go back through some of my posts on the Anti-Sneap forum, and you can see some of the stuff I was learning at the time. It's all there. It's part of public record. An IR can short circuit that whole learning process and get you in the ballpark a whole lot faster than miking a cab up. There's nothing wrong with that. The thing is, I don't think anybody should just stop with IRs. I think there should be a push there to learn the engineering as well. But ultimately, as long as you're not fucking with the performance, you can still push the artist to a breaking point with an IR. If you're just gonna timeline everything, why bother?
Glenn, do you still have your dual rectifier? If yes, do you ever prefer it over the other heads you have?
Yes, I have it. No, I don't really use it too much these days. Not when I've got, revs and soldanos and angles and all kinds of other amazing options. Not really a big fan of how Mesa runs their social media, especially when they started banning all kinds of people, myself included, off their Instagram for mentioning that they were banning people off their Instagram. Great policy there, guys. Really do appreciate that. And this is coming from one of your customers that bought your cabinet and your amp. I've had one since 2000. Oh yeah, that Mesa Boogie dual rectifier is still up for grabs. I do plan on giving it away whenever I hit 1 million subscribers, and at this rate, that might happen in 2045.
Fun fact, samples sounded better here because they're not overcompressed with a ton of bad reverb and no pre-delay. Imagine critiquing the use of samples other than nobody cares already, and then proposing a worse solution that sounds like a bad interpretation of drum sound from the 90s. And BDW Audio 101, don't clip your master. Saying and showing dumb things makes you look like a bad boomer parody of the angry video game nerd. I know you make money with this YouTube channel, but really, stop this is already way too awkward and insulting. You've gone too far for anybody to take you seriously at this point.
Didn't you ever watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Rule number 1, you can never go too far.
Curious to know where you stand on electronic drum kits, which has a human hitting them, but it's still a sample.
Yeah, I did the fake drums challenge there last summer. For the most part, it was a lot of fun, but a few people were upset that apparently I didn't open some of their entries that I didn't get. Oh well, whatever. Tried the best I could. And the guy who wound up winning it was actually playing on an electronic kit because there is some semblance of a performance there. The trick is not to fucking time-align everything so everything's like perfect. Again, it's about coloring outside the lines. A little bit of drift is okay. I'd much rather listen to a guy on an electronic kit than somebody who's programmed out a drum line with a mouse.
Hey Glenn, any advice for those who want to human-sounding drums but only has access to program stuff? Cheers and fuck you from Sweden.
Hey Elias, thanks so much for writing in. The big problem I find with MIDI drums is everybody programs the velocity to 127, which is the maximum volume, and leaves it at that, and there's no nuance there, so it sounds just punch pressed. It just sounds fucking boring. Shit's cool when it's loud, but when it's loud all the time, it loses its excitement. Here's a tip. If you're programming blast beats, try and get a little more human with it, because when a drummer plays blast beats, usually the hit strength on the snare goes down quite a bit. So instead of 127, you want to bring that down all the way to 60 or 50. And if they're doing gravity blast, you might want to go down to about 20 or 30, because that's what a gravity blast sounds like. That'll get you a lot more realistic. And once again, you don't have to snap everything to the grid. A little bit of drift, a little bit of push and pull goes a very long way into making things sound so much more authentic, because that's how humans play drums. It's not dead on the grid. Rock and roll doesn't happen on a grid.
People don't seem to understand there's only so many big name bands to be had, and they have their own circle of people that they work with. They don't just pull names out of a hat and then decide that person is who's going to mix and master a record. I wonder how many people that criticize Glenn have a successful YouTube channel and recording studio that they produce chart-topping songs and records with.
Now, the only person I know of that fits that criteria laid out is probably Warren Hewitt over at Produce Like a Pro. He's been a big booster of this channel over the years. He's a really good friend and just an awesome dude. If you guys haven't subscribed to Produce Like a Pro, I definitely recommend checking it out. he doesn't do so much metal stuff. He did Aerosmith, he did The Fray, that kind of stuff. Very cool for what he does, and that's great. Now, when it comes to actually talking with other guys who have records out on the charts and have made successful albums, that kind of thing, we're all very respectful of each other, and I find a lot of those guys actually watch the show and really enjoy it. And all of you guys out there, I say thank you oh so much for your support.
How do you balance the expectations of ignorant clients who see the gear, size, and setup of your average home studio and think it's rinky-dink, when they have absolutely no clue what all the gear is capable of? Have you ever bought specific pieces of gear mostly because it looks more impressive?
Now, that's something I can honestly say I've never done, is bought a piece of gear because it looked impressive, especially because of my experience in manufacturing. I worked extremely hard for the money I made, so if I was going to spend it on gear, you can be damn straight I did all kinds of homework on it beforehand before I ever pulled the trigger. I'd usually research something for months on end. It's like, how is this going to improve my sound? Now, as for convincing clients to come record in your studio, having impressive gear is one thing, but you really have to tell them, okay, look, do you like the sound of what's coming out of the speakers, and would you like your band to sound like that? That's the most important thing. If they don't like the sound of what's coming out of the speakers, then they should probably go somewhere else. But if they like how it sounds and they're going to bitch about, oh, well, you don't have this, you don't have this, you don't have this, it's like, dude, listen to what the speakers are doing. That's the important part. Try and drive that part home. Good luck reasoning with a musician, though.
We just can't seem to find a metal drummer here in Cordoba, Argentina. Is this a common thing elsewhere? What would be your advice for finding one?
Hey, Lucas, thanks so much for writing in. Oh, man, finding a great drummer, especially a great metal drummer anywhere, can be real difficult, especially because it's so much easier to program that shit. If you guys are into playing live, yeah, you're going to need a drummer. I don't know, man. Check your local Facebook groups for musicians, that kind of thing. Hit up your music stores, put up some flyers, that kind of thing. Metal band seeking metal drummer. Hell, man, I'll do what I can. If there's any metal drummers out there in Argentina in Lucas's immediate vicinity, he needs a drummer desperately. Please give him a call or look him up otherwise. Dude, hope that helps. Good luck.
Hey, Glenn, what metal guitar or brand would you recommend for less than 600 Aussie currency?
Harley Benton Amrock, dude. This is under $500 US, which should fit 600 Aussie or very close to it. It is a neck through the body guitar with EMG pickups, hip shot bridge, and locking tuners. Plays absolutely amazing, and it is probably the best bang for the buck guitar on the market these days. Definitely go check them out on the Thomann website. I can't recommend these enough. They're absolutely phenomenal.
Glenn, please answer, please! How do I use my Torpedo Lives just as a Loadbox? You said you did it on the video. Show me the way.
Okay, this shouldn't be a really difficult thing. It's a pretty basic setup. Allow me to show you. Got this sitting in the rack over there. On the back here, you're just going to want to hook your speaker up and don't hook in the through part. You got a load box right there. All you got to do is plug the audio output into your sound card and you're good to go. It's really nothing to it.
Hey Glenn, I'm thinking of getting a Joyo Zombie and a Harley Benton Vintage 30 cab to learn how to mic up an amp. Is that a good idea? Will the size of my cab, i.e. 1, 2, 4x12, affect my results in learning process? Cheers from Tier 4.
Yes on all parts. I would definitely recommend getting a cab to practice on. Just be forewarned, you're going to need to put some time in on it, probably a lot more than you're planning on to really get your head around it. Once again, this is where IRs can kind of help you and give you an idea where the sound should be. Try and make it sound like that. There's going to be a lot of trial and error. Take a lot of notes. That being said, a 1x12, 2x12, and 4x12 all sound completely different. I did a video with Phil McKnight at TGU there a couple of years back where we shot out a bunch of different Harley Benton cabs and they all sound completely different. The 4x12 was great and the vertical 2x12 was awesome. I'd recommend that one over a 1x12 because it just sounds a little bit thumpier and you're going to get two speakers and every speaker is just a little bit different from the next one. So you will get a slightly bigger variety of tones to try out. It's a lot of work to learn how to mic a cab correctly, especially for metal tones, but it's well worth the rewards. Good luck, dude.
Why rigid fiberglass and not rock wool or mineral wool?
Rigid fiberglass is very, very dense and it works better on low frequencies as opposed to rock wool. I've got a lot of rock wool in here, but when I built my specific traps to put on the wall and whatnot, it was done using rigid fiberglass. And rigid fiberglass, the problem with it is it's a little bit harder to find. You can't usually find it at your Home Depots. You've got to go to a building supply company instead. So might want to check out the Yellow Pages or see if you can order it online in one capacity or another. But the stuff definitely does the trick. I used to have a real problem with my guitar cabs and creating a lot of resonances around 120 hertz and the guitars being farty and whatnot. And as soon as I put some corner traps in my big drum room, that just cleared that up immediately, and I could just crank the bottom end on the guitar amps and get this nice, super tight bottom end. And it all had to do with the fact that I built bass traps. If you guys are wondering about any of that stuff, I did a video there a couple years back on building bass traps. Definitely recommend checking it out. It's got step-by-step instructions on how to do it. I'll have a link to that in the video description.
How much does the depth of the snare make? I'm a punk rock guy and have a studio. I love the sound of my piccolo.
Spoken like a true drummer. Dude, I hope you didn't get drool all over your phone typing that out. Now, the snare depth will make a bit of a difference. I like the 6.5s. I'm not a huge piccolo fan, but then again, it all comes down to personal taste. My suggestion would be borrow a few snares from a few different friends if you can get your hands on them, or go and find some cheap used ones somewhere and try a few different ideas out. Just make sure you reskin them first and don't over crank them when you're tuning them. Find a lot of drummers fall into that problem, trying to get a super tight sound, and that's not how it happens. It's from doing rim shots, not by cranking the living shit out of that. It's just a good way to choke off the drum and make it sound like shit. All right, everybody, that's it for this episode. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you see, please do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. And keep those comments and questions coming, because I love hearing from you. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video.